Welcome to Mormon Book Reviews, where an evangelical encounters the restoration. I am your host, Stephen Pynakker, and this is a very special episode. And stay tuned to the very end as to why I am here wearing an Outer Darkness hat. Okay, so you got to stay to the very end. So I give the reveal. But I just want to welcome my friend Gene Judson, who I got to see recently, who was a volunteer at this year's Sunstone. And welcome back to the program, because last year you gave your report, and so this year we're going to do an annual report about Sunstone afterwards to kind of do a briefing for our audience to let them know and encourage them to attend next year. And Gene Judson is my reporter on the reporter at the scene. Gene Judson, welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot, Steve, for having me back. I was telling somebody just the other day that you've now committed us to an annual review of Sunstone. So the rest of my life, I'm going to have to go to Sunstone, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. And I've also have the rest of my life commitment that was made to me as well by Lindsay Hansen Park, which is tied into the hat. So stay tuned to the very end. So I tell you what happened.
And the other thing is, I think there was almost double the amount of attendees from last year. So our last year's show probably, helped boost attendance.
That's what I'm thinking too. I think we give such high praise to Lindsay Hansen Park and the wonderful people at Sunstone I'm sure that's what packed them in this year. That's a great way to look at it, Gene. Great way to look at it. And we have to just say, I have to, first of all, this also was, which was cool, was the first year that your wife also was there, and she also served as a volunteer at Sunstone as well. Is that correct?
That is correct. She is far better a volunteer than I am. She was really helpful at the front desk, registering people and handing out the name tags. And I kind of like hovered around the background. Sometimes she would say, "Well, what are you doing?" And I'd say, "Oh, I'm supervising."
Well, the
And
patriarchy is, you're just doing your patriarchal thing, right?
that's right. And I started taking photos, and Lindsay saw me, and I took a picture of her and some of the speakers. And she goes, "Hey, Gene, since you're taking pictures, send a whole bunch to Grace, and you'll be our official photographer." So
Official
I am
photography.
the impromptu official photographer.
Yeah, that seems to be the spirit of Sunstone, finding our cameraman as it happens. By the way, I just wanted to share this lovely piece of art that your lovely wife made. And she says that each person who picked the right one for them. And I want to read what's on the back of the card. This is a peacock. I said, I want peacock for Pynakker, right? And I was like, by being yourself, you put something in the world that was not there before. You think about the world, the Mormon podcast world before I existed, before I hopped in. Think how much different it is now as a result of this channel. It's pretty crazy when you stop and think about it. So I thought that's very apt. So nice piece of artwork. I love it. Thanks, Michelle.
Painted about 10 of those 3x3 mini watercolors and gave them to, all the famous people, including Steve Pynakker, that we could find.
So, I did want to give a shout out. I got there, and of course, I did everything at the last minute, folks. So you just understand, like, it was the Sunday before Sunstone. I was like, okay, this is my last chance. If I'm going to book, when I got up that morning, I got to book today. And originally I wasn't going to do it because I raised around $900 for my 2 trips. Like I said, I needed to raise money for my presentation I'm giving at John Whitmer in Texas this September. And as a result, I really didn't think, because I had just gone to Kansas City for the Book of Mormon rally, and then I went to Mormon History Association in June. I just didn't think I'd have the funds to be able to go to Sunstone. And so I put out a call and I raised $900. It was still a little short of where I needed to be, but I thought, well, I can at least pay for the Texas trip. And then I felt like I'm supposed to go. And then when Lindsay said, "Hey, Steve, we want you back in your volunteer role," which I'll tell you later on, wait till the end of the show. She was like, "Why don't you do it again this year?" So I'm like, okay, so that pays for my trip. Now that pays for my registration. So I'm like, I booked the flight. There's only like 1 or 2 seats left on both flights. I'm able to do it round trip for less than $500. People volunteered their homes to me. I actually ended up staying at one home. Somebody dropped in some money in my Venmo account to pay a night at the hotel. I could have stayed at a different person's house every night while I was there. That's how wonderful. But not only that, but after I booked the flight, I raised another $600 for the trip. So it was really a blessing, the generosity from ex-Mormons and true blue Mormons and everybody in between. I want to thank all of those of you who made this possible. And I'll tell you, Gene, I'm so glad I went, because I really feel like Mormon Book Reviews' audience and Sunstone's audience kind of fit hand in glove. I think there's a lot of overlap, diversity of the restoration. I call Sunstone where Burning Man meets Mormonism. And maybe Gene, maybe just talk a little bit about some of your experiences that you had as a volunteer, and then also some of the interactions with people that you had as well. And also maybe tell us about other things that you think the audience would find interesting.
That's right. Well, let's start at the beginning. On let's see, Thursday night, they had let's see, a lady who spoke. Her name is Kristen Cobes-Dumez,
Yeah.
and she can't remember. I guess she wrote a book
Yeah,
that
but
links Jesus to
John
John
Wayne.
Wayne,
Mm-hmm.
and saying like that's the modern Christianity has sort of made Jesus a new John Wayne kind of a figure, and strapping, virile man instead of a peacemaker necessarily, maybe.
And she
Although,
teaches at an evangelical university, Calvin University, and so
right,
yeah, interesting. So she was speaking as an outsider to about to a Mormon group, but about the issues that are happening in the evangelical world, where we've morphed into something completely different than what we were at one time.
usually the first speaker at Sunstone is free the night before the other events happen, and so there were a few hundred people there at
Oh yeah.
least,
Oh, at
and
least.
maybe 30 or 40% of them heard the advertisements on the radio or wherever, or on Facebook or something, and came to it, and so that was kind of good. Then on
Well, before we start, I just wanted to say that before Sunstone, because you were probably busy, we actually had a meetup set up at the Crown Burgers, just within walking distance of the conference center. Had over around 2,000 people show up, and it was a diverse group of people. We had a great time. If you're friends with me on Facebook, I've posted photos on there, so check those out as well. So I had a great shout out to everybody who came out to the meetup on Thursday night.
yeah, sorry about that. I was there. My wife kind of sat next to a guy who wanted to proselyte to her about how good his version of Jewish Mormonism was, and that was like way over our heads in a way. And so Michelle kind of escaped, and I kind of left early too because of that. But anyhow, but otherwise it was fun. I enjoyed the burgers, and so then before the events were done, there was a complimentary breakfast, and they honored 50 years of Mormon history of Mike Marquardt,
Mm-hmm.
and that was kind of fun. And then the opening plenary was Daniel McClellan. Now, did you go to that? Because I was kind of at the front desk at the time, and I
Yeah.
missed out on that. But that's
Yeah,
the
I
other
was.
thing I was going to say is in a couple days they're going to drop the online version of
Yep.
Sunstone, and so that's when I'm going to go hop on and
Yeah,
catch all
so
the.
it was a good presentation. I didn't get there right on time, but I caught like the last half of it, and I actually would do lunch with him afterwards. So yeah, it was great conversation. Yeah, it's worth checking out.
I got to take my picture with Dan and show everybody that I'm taller than he is. So
That's
anyway,
important.
that's what I got out of it. But anyway, and then there were a few others right away that I missed, but I thought I'd give them a shout out. There was Mashing Up Mormonism with Matt Page, who's quite an artist, and he had also a table there where he would display his wares. And then the Mormon Mental Health Association did about 5 segments on like religious trauma, overcoming toxic positivity, faith crisis and mixed faith couples, navigating high demand religion, and something else with some letters that I don't know what it is. But anyway, they probably would know. But let's see, the first thing I went to was mainstreaming psychedelic Mormonism. And so I wanted to see what that was all about.
Did you wear were you wearing your tie-dye shirt?
I could have been.
Good. They probably
I
thought
think
you were the
somebody.
guru that was going to speak.
Yeah, no, I was not the speaker. Oh, and just before that was something about Eugene England's Length and Light. And I wish I had gone to that, but I was taking pictures and doing some other things at the front booth. And then I guess there was the visual image of Joseph Smith presentation, but was out by Locke and some other people.
Mm-hmm.
And so that would have been good. Then came in the afternoon Dan Vogel's Charisma Under Pressure,
Mm-hmm.
where Cheryl Bruno was supposed to come, and they had extra labels, and so I stole people who weren't able to make it. So Dan phoned it in basically, but he had some problems, with the reception or whatever. I think there were some thunderstorms going on or something at the time, but they figured it out, and somebody read Cheryl Bruno's review. There's another word they do that at these conferences. What do they call that? It's a critical review or something.
Yeah,
like
critical
that.
review. Yeah. She wrote.
Yeah. And then Dan gave his side of the story and presented things from his book, and then people asked some questions about how long, because he'd been working on it for years and years and years.
Yeah.
Part of that was because my understanding is that this book was assigned some other author
Mm-hmm.
who wasn't able to complete it, and so Dan pretty much had to, get boxes and boxes of research material, go through it.
Yep.
But he also wanted to do his spin to it because he is doing his own series. Start out with the Making of a Prophet, and then this one, and he's now going to be working on his third volume.
Yep. Yeah, it's kind of funny because it's part of a trilogy that Signature's working on, but it's also part of his trilogy that he's working on, this being the second book. So it's kind of interesting how that's happened. But I actually think it's kind of cool that it worked out that way. Two birds.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. One thing I forgot to show is I bought this from Mike. Got him to sign it.
Wow.
So
That's
still
cool.
haven't looked at it, but it's I can't wait to find out. Let's see. And then Friday night, I missed the closing plenary with Eli McCann. Did you happen to go to that?
Mm-hmm.
I went to dinner with some of my family that lives in the area now.
Oh, okay.
And so we just hung out with them for a little while, and then.
Yeah, Eli's a nice guy. I invited him to come on the program. I met him and his husband, and it was really good. Yeah, good dude.
You remember what he spoke about?
Yeah, he talked about Mormon media portrayals, as I recall. Mormonism in the media, as I recall. Movies and stuff like that, TV shows, how they were portrayed, made by the church, as I recall.
Then on Saturday, we worked at the booth again. First thing I went to then was a presentation on Mormon TikTok. I believe a grad student had done for one of her projects a sort of a study of Mormon TikToks, and she wanted to see like what things were maybe negative, what were neutral, what was out there that was positive, and she did sort of some statistical analysis of the different things. And then after she started to field questions, Kara Burrell, also known as Nuance Ho, came on and said, ask a question, and they had a little bit of their own discussion. Kara mentioned that, people who are speaking out are finding, a cathartic effect where it helps to, start your new life and put away the old. It's almost like when you have a funeral for somebody. People are leaving, and it's kind of like they're putting away the old things and they're starting things new. And so, having a little discussion about it. And then I mentioned in a question when she fielded it about perhaps, because she talked about how the ex-Mormon had lots of colorful, funny, humorous TikToks, and the faithful presentations were a little bit more limited. And I said, well, maybe the ex-Mormons feel a little bit freer to do things where a current member might wonder if the bishop is going to watch, the TikTok, or if somebody else in the ward or some other might receive some other pushback from somebody
Hmm.
for doing their
Now,
thing.
was
And
Fresh
so,
King Benjamin in that? Was he in that session too?
oh yeah, I missed that. I forgot to say that I did attend Fresh King Benjamin's workshop,
Oh,
Find the Funny in Your Story.
good.
And there was about a dozen people in his workshop on Friday. And there were some interesting things that happened. And I met a guy named Ganesh Chirian, who's from New Zealand. And he actually is a budding comedian who is a former bishop and former stake high counselor. And I think he's going to be on Mormon Stories either this week or next week.
Oh, okay.
We got an interview with John. And he and I have been buddies. And so, so I called him the other day and he goes, "Oh, I can't talk right now because I'm at the FIFA, tournament in Wellington. I can't remember if it was Spain and versus Netherlands or some women thing. But anyway, it was kind of fun to
Oh, that's cool.
see
Made a new friend.
do that.
Oh, by the way, I wanted to say, folks, too, that of course, I interviewed with Fresh King Benjamin, and I told him that I've kind of been thinking of taking up stand-up comedy, and he offered to kind of do a little workshop for me over Zoom. So look for me to maybe do a 5-minute set on Amateur Night in Sarasota down the road. I'll keep you posted.
I think I filmed a little bit of it at the beginning of his presentation, and I'll send that to you.
Excelente.
See if he covers the same ground.
Got it.
Let's see. I missed the showing of Ronald's Little Factory. My wife and I went out for lunch, and I just totally forgot that I could have just gone seeing it. I know that they did a showing over the last few months in like southern Utah.
Yeah, and Broovies had it. That's David
Valley.
Dokovoy's brother is the person who produced that and directed it, I believe.
Then, for me, which was the highlight of the show of the day, was an episode titled Dating DNC Section 132. And that's all it says. But it featured Radio Free Mormon and Randy Bell. Randy Bell discussed actually the Dartmouth connection to the Joseph Smith family.
Mm-hmm.
So people were making fun of the title. Somebody said, "Well, I like DNC Section 132, but I never dated it." So anyway, and some other people were saying some other things like that. And then there was Spiritual Paths of the September 6th, 30 years later. And I think tonight they're doing, which is Sunday night, so it'll be, have already done, but they're doing an episode tonight at 6 tonight, my time. I don't know if you want to look that up.
Well, who's putting that on?
Maybe Lindsay. I saw it on Lindsay Hanson Park's page.
Cool.
And so I, instead of going to that, very educational, really good, honoring past historians, I instead went to Soaking and Soft Swapping Slippery Slopes by Natasha Helfer Parker.
Sure.
Which was just like not necessarily a bait and switch, but she just talked more like a scholarly person about sexuality and religious things. So it wasn't, they didn't have any demonstrations or anything.
No demonstrations. Oh, okay.
So
well,
Michelle and I left when I found that
out. Yeah, Natasha just reached out to me a couple days ago. She's we're going to be doing something together, so watch for that.
And then, of course, the closing picnic happened.
Yes.
And that's always a fun thing. You know what? I keep on wanting to see the kickball, but I don't know whether I have a long day that happened and I sit down at a bench and I start eating tacos or whatever they've served and nachos, and I never find my way over to the
yeah, so the official photographer didn't take any official photo
official
of the
photographer
kickball game.
Totally missed that.
You blew it there. You dropped the ball at the kickball game.
I'm 64. I got an extra set of glasses I wear all the time, just so that in case I need to put on glasses to find my other glasses.
Right.
And I found a nice, comfy bench, and some food and totally forgot about taking pictures of the soccer. I mean,
So what was happening,
game.
what happens is on the closing night, what you have is you have the trivia night going on in the gazebo, or what do you call those?
Food court, we'll call it.
Food
I don't know
court,
where they
field
have
house, whatever.
benches.
And then it's a public park, and then we play on the other side of the fence. We play our annual kickball game, and that's what leads us to what I had to hold back here on, was that we did have the kickball game, and it was between Team Outer Darkness and Team Higher Law. And the reason why I'm wearing Team Outer Darkness's hat, and by the way, this is how it works. Team Outer Darkness is ex-Mormons, and Team Higher Law are polygamists, Mormon fundamentalists. And for the first time ever, Team Outer Darkness defeated Higher Law 15-6. Now, I will tell you, folks, I will give you the inside story here. Because, see, the reason why I know all this is I'm the umpire, and I have been granted the invitation to be the umpire for as long as I want to be an umpire. Yes, in perpetuity, for the annual kickball game. And the reason why Team Outer Darkness won was because last year Team Higher Law won in extra innings, and I threw the game to them because they bribed me with shares for Bishop Coyle's Dream Mine. And this year they didn't do it. So went to Team Outer Darkness this year. Just want to tell you how this little game's really played, just so you know, folks.
Game within the game.
The game within the game. Exactly. I have
to
just...
But who was the star for the Expos? Was anybody stand out as a good kicker or fielder?
That's a great question. Not at the moment. Hey, you got me there on my own program. I'm speechless. I can't answer the question.
Well, I wish I had gone and taken some photos, and then we could have discussed it ahead of time.
And you could have documented it.
So it's back to my fault again.
It's all on you. Just remember that, Gene. It's all on you. So just a few things. I just want to thank, first of all, Sunstone Symposium. You people are awesome. I want to shout out to Grace and Michelle and Cass and Stacy and Corey, and of course, Lindsay Hansen Park. I get there and I'm not officially signed up. They just say, okay, well, you're here, Steve. Let's get you all signed up. You're gonna write up a name tag, and like, oh, and do you want to mediate a form, because we had a cancellation for mediation, so I got to mediate, be the moderator, excuse me, for the Denver Snuffer talk on Saturday, right about an hour or two before the softball game. Was towards the end of the sessions, and so I got to moderate a session with Denver Snuffer, and we actually hung out the next day for a little bit too. Denver and I, many of his supporters or people who follow his teachings were in the room like a half hour before it even started. Many people came there just to see Denver, and it was a pretty full room. And when I got there, I had all these people come up to me and say, "We just loved your interview with Denver, Steve. It was like the best interview ever done with Denver. We really appreciate you." And I have to tell you, let me get you something too. This is really cool. But yeah, it was interesting because Denver spoke for about 45 minutes, and his wife, well, his wife made a request that, Steve, sometimes people, when they come up and do the questions, they just want to talk and they don't want to really answer a question. So can you maybe say something? So the way I ended up towards the end, when they did the questions, I said, a request has been made that the questions be on topic and that they be questions. And so that's how we set the rules up. But let me show you something that was given to me.
Some fun tags they had underneath.
Oh yeah, you were somebody.
I got to be somebody.
That's awesome. So one of Denver's friends came to me and said, I felt impressed that I'm supposed to send you some our scriptures. And just the other day, I got the complete set right here of the Restoration. It's a Restoration Scriptures Foundation. This is their project right here. And this is what comes with it. And it came with 3 editions of their scriptures. The first one is the Old Covenants, which covers the Old Testament. The second one is the New Covenants. And what makes this so unique is that the New Covenants are the New Testament as well as the Book of Mormon. And then the final one is their version of the Doctrines and Covenants, which is called Teachings and Commandments. And these are new revelations that are, so they include many of the revelations that would be familiar to the Latter-day Saint people, but also there are further things that they've since added into their set. This is a beautiful goat skin set that was sent to me, but it was sent to me by somebody who was at the thing and said, I felt impressed to send this to you. and I got it. And so I do have a relationship with Denver Snuffer and his people. I find them to be very nice people, and I'm glad that they enjoyed my interview of him. So I just want to share that. Now, don't you have a few books that you want to share too that you got at the conference?
Yeah, so one of the attractions is that the signature books and some other publishers come, and so
Yeah.
I bought this book. My brother married the grandniece of Harold B. Lee,
Oh, wow.
so I thought I'd get that book and maybe share it with him. And then I've been wanting to read more
Oh, yeah.
about Michael Quinn by Newell,
Yeah.
and I read that. And I brought this book called Meet the Mormons. A little over 50 years ago, this was published, and I had Lindsay Hansen Park sign it, and she wrote a nice little note and said, "Brother and Sister Judson, here are some of the good ones. Thanks for all you do. There's more than one way to Mormon, and you do it well. Love you both, Lindsay Hansen Park." And then I got Locke Mackay to sign it, and he says, "I hope I'm the Judson's favorite Josephite," which is kind of fun.
Of course, Lachlan
And
Mackay is an apostle in the community of Christ, as well as a direct descendant of Joseph Smith.
and I'm not sure if they're going to update this book and say "Meet the members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints" or not. I don't know if they're going to do that or not, but we'll see. They might need 2 cover pages to fit that all in.
Yeah. So,
Oh yeah, and one other last thing is that on Sunday, the Community of Christ holds service, and they usually have a couple of sort of extra speakers for the whole Sunstone program. And I kind of figure that there's you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back, where the Community of Christ says, "Hey, we're going to send a bunch of people to Sunstone. Why don't you have a couple of speakers that we're advertise that we're going to share some speakers that are just as I don't know, high-powered scholarship as what's going to be there." And so I attended again this year, and Nancy Ross spoke on the history of women's ordination in the Community of Christ, which was very interesting. The whole, like how it started, they had women that were, social activists, and they started a movement, and it ended up with them getting a revelation so that they could be ordained.
In 1984, women were granted the priesthood in what was then the RLDS.
And one thing that was interesting is it took about a year for the first ordinations because there was already a process. Ordinations are not done lightly. They're not done just because somebody reaches a certain age. It's usually somebody feels called, and then there's some instruction that goes along before they get ordained, and there's a whole process. And so that delayed a little bit, and they ordained about, I can't remember if it's 50 or 100 women on the same day.
Yep.
So that there was not one person that would be like the first one.
Right.
They just did it as like a team effort.
Yep.
And then John Hamer did a presentation on called "Many Paths, Truth and Meaning Beyond a One True Church Identity," which was really good, like how you can get meaning without having to worry about the dogma. And that's, the meaning I got from it is, like always, to me, the best things about, being Christian or being Mormon is to love one another, to be good to each other, and, live happy lives together. And hopefully with the building bridges, sort of, I don't know what you call it. It's not a project, but it's sort of like what more and more people are doing. You're doing it with MBR. Hello Saints is doing it. You have Patrick Mason is building bridges. Jim Bennett. Lots of people. So
yeah, I think this is the third way that's happening. I think that the world needs this now more than ever. And I think we can also just kind of demonstrate how we can do this. And I think that we can be a great role models in this time of divisiveness. It shows that be uh, we can be civil during these times. Now, I also have to tell you something. Did you know what I got to do while I was there? I got to drive a Tesla. And the reason why I got to drive a Tesla is because Swanee Speed was my personal Uber during the weekend. She picked me up at the airport and drove me around a few places. And she didn't like driving the Tesla, so I got to ride around in the Tesla for a bit. And that was kind of drive it, and that was fun. So a lot of experiences. I'm sure we could go another half hour about all of our experiences. I have to tell you, this year it was like there were a lot of people there. I talked to Lindsay. She said they had like 1,200 registrations just on Friday alone, and even more. And I'm guessing there were probably all told, anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 people that showed up for this thing. Considering we probably had that much more on Saturday. So I had this large portion of people, and I have to tell you that I was so many people came up to me. One of the first things they say, "Oh, I didn't realize how tall you were," and others would be like, or they just start telling me about their favorite episode, or you should have that guest on, or one person even asked how the floor's coming along in your house, because I go on I talk about new floors, and people ask about my floors, and they ask about my mom, and I just really want to say that I really I made some new friends. I had a second while I was out there. I got to meet with a lot of people. I was able to tape I taped 2 episodes for my show. As a matter of fact, I just got one of them sent to me by one of the Paul brothers. That's the Stick of Joseph people that I was on their show, and that's got like 10,000 views already. And now I interviewed them after we did lunch, so I'll be releasing that this week or next week. And then also I then went back on Tuesday night, the night before I was leaving, and I interviewed both Barbara Jones Brown and Richard Turley, along with my co-host Rebecca Biblioteca, and we talked about the Vengeance is Mine book, which deals with the Mountain Meadows Massacre. Folks, it's a great interview. It's wonderful, and I was able to ask some questions that I think a lot of people would have wanted to have asked. But more importantly, Rebecca and Barbara Jones Brown had a great opportunity to have a conversation, especially since they both are direct descendants of perpetrators of the massacre. This I felt was an important talk through session for them, that they were able to kind of talk through some of the trauma that they've experienced being direct descendants. So I think this is probably one of the most important episodes ever filmed on Mormon Book Reviews. Look for that one soon as well. And then I did so much stuff. I went to CJ's bookstore in Provo, got to meet him, hung out with Jared, who's a student at BYU for a little while that afternoon in Provo. Went and visited the Provo campus, BYU campus. Found my hat at the BYU store. Actually, took a picture of it, and people were asking, "Did I really sell the MBR hat at the bookstore?" Like, no, that's not happening. But I was having a little fun, and so I could spend an afternoon at out there. And this is the other thing that was crazy, Gene. When I was out there, I get recognized in public now, so it's kind of I guess you could say I'm kind of a D-lister in Utah, which is fine. And I just want to say I really love everybody. I'm really glad I went to Sunstone this year. It's recharges my batteries coming out there. It's more fan convention than a serious historical conference, which I'm used to attending. And it's just where
Mormon
people have a
Con.
good time. What's that? Mormon
I said
Con?
it's like Mormon Con.
Mormon Con, exactly. That's what it is. And so really, honestly, and this is the thing, folks, there's fundamentalists there, there's evangelicals there, there's true blue Mormons, and there's ex-Mormons. And there's a few handful of church employees there too that I ran into. So it's a well representative of, I think, my audience. There's atheists there, there's transgender people there. I mean, it's just this great mix. I love seeing transgender and fundamentalist and church employees all sitting at the same table talking with each other. I said, if it can be done, folks, yes, it can. So, Gene, was there anything else that you wanted to talk about or mention before we wrap this up?
They might have to get a bigger venue because after our show, they might get 3,000 next year. You never know.
No, the American Mountain America Center, whatever that's called, that might not be big enough.
And one other thing is, in the spirit of building bridges, last year you said, "Hey, Gene, when are you going to start your own podcast?"
Yeah.
And I am poised. Haven't really started it yet.
Okay. I didn't know if I
But
was supposed to bring that up. So tell
yeah,
us,
so
or maybe give us a preview.
I was inspired to mention it right now.
Okay.
So it's going to be called Ladder Daily Digest. and it's going to be a podcast about Mormon podcasts as a way to spread the word, get people interested in other podcasts. I know a lot of people are reticent to start another podcast because it might take 2 or 3 hours of viewing to decide whether they like it or not. And so I thought, well, we would review some podcasts, we'd bring some podcasters in, let them share their story, and then share some of their favorite podcasts, and as a way of getting people learning about more podcasts. So that's it.
Great. So you get to watch and listen to all the podcasts so that we don't have to. And then we can pick.
So that's one thing, is either A, I'm going to have to get a 10 times player, do that, or B, I'm going to sort of crowdsource and let a whole bunch of people watch a whole bunch of podcasts, and then I'll just filter it and share it.
Okay. Well,
So
it's a work in progress. You're working on it. I know you've asked me advice a few times. You've been going around to other podcasters and getting advice from them. Whatever I can do to help and promote that endeavor as well. Of course, we'll have you back on at some point to talk about your project as well. Very exciting idea. I think it's a brilliant idea, and I wish the whole endeavor Godspeed.
Very much.
Well, folks, what do you think of Sunstone if you went? And if you watch this, does this give you a reason to want to come next year, or maybe not come? Don't know. Either way, let us know what you thought about Sunstone. What was your favorite experiences? I could have talked about Evan Charlie. I could have talked about all the other people that I went and talked to. There was just so much that goes on at Sunstone. It's really hard to, they pack so much in that 2-day period. It's pretty remarkable, and it's a great time. So real quick, folks, just a reminder, don't forget, we do have a merch store called MormonBookReviews.com, where you can get hats and you can get t-shirts, and hats like this, you're right there. And of course, I even have mouse pads, whatever. We got them there, MormonBookReviews.com. For those of you who'd like to financially support this channel, you can support us via Patreon, Venmo, as well as on Patreon, Venmo, and what was that? Oh, PayPal. And so those are the ways that you can help us as well. So just remember, the most important thing is this, folks. Remember, all the voices of the restoration will be heard here on Mormon Book Reviews.